Lurie, who's been a longtime friend of AFA, even before I was familiar with AFA. He was a great friend of Avi Davis, the founder of the American Freedom Alliance. Barak is also now on our board. And I think the issue of kids in schools and how to deal with that is the topic of his book. So please join me in welcoming Barak Lurie.
Karen, I'm very upset with you. I want to make that very clear. You made me follow Alex Newman. I don't know. That was not cool. So, look, I want to kind of, some of Alex's comments made me think about how, you always have to look at the root cause of anything. And I believe that godlessness, as you all know me, is a chief culprit in the devastation of our society. With God back in society, we will eliminate 95, if not more, % of the issues of our day. Whether that's homelessness, or crime, or war for that matter, we would have a fantastic world without that. Unfortunately, because we live in such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Insane world now, antiseptic society where we've enjoyed so much of the benefits of freedom and free speech and such. We've not really been exposed to what a world would look like without God on a continued basis. And so here we are. And if you look at godlessness or secularism as a virus, as you should, you would know that if we expose ourselves to it, perhaps we can become immune from it. But it makes us stronger only if we bring God back into the situation. That is the antidote. That is our vaccine, as it were, and not the bad kind of vaccine that we've seen recently. All right. Well, I want to kind of start off with a little something. So this man and a woman, they meet. They like each other. I'm going to try to raise this. Is there a way to raise this microphone? Man and woman meet. They really hit it off. Everything is great. He's very wealthy. She's beautiful. And it's a whirlwind romance. You know, they're a little bit older, like 50, so she's about 35. And so they get married. After a month of meeting, it's just fantastic. And they could not be more happy. But then time passes on. The husband hears a couple things from his friends that there's some questions about this woman. Oddly enough, each of her previous husbands, as it turns out, she had 3, each of them died of mysterious circumstances. All of them, apparently, the only thing in common was that they all had died of following the consumption of a fancy coffee drink. The first one after drinking a hazelnut latte, second one a cafe Americano, then a cafe mocha. So he decides, look, he wants to bring this up gently. I'm sure that's all coincidence. So they meet together, and he says, sweetie, I got to tell you, I'm sure it's all crazy talk, but I'd heard that your previous husbands died in mysterious circumstances. The first one, he goes through the coffee thing, and she says, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you would think this of me, that you insinuate that I, murdered, poisoned my previous husbands? This is an awful thing for you to say. Now shut up and drink your cappuccino. So that's the way it is. I got a feeling when we're talking about children, this has been going on for a long time. Alex brought this up. It's been for many decades now. And I feel like we're not savvy about the coffee that we're drinking, right? And look, right now, we're learning that America is bad. I'm telling you, I have 3 young children, all in, grade school and high school. And they're learning good stuff because we moved to Las Vegas. It's a lot better there. But we were here until two and a half years ago. And part of the reason why we moved is precisely because of the kids' situation. And what they were learning there, and what we were fighting all the time, was that America is bad, gender is fluid, socialism is very, very good, Israel's a genocidal country. God knows what they're teaching them now. That was 2.5 years ago. And an apartheid country, no less. God is a silly relic of the past. Not only that, but it's also religion, that is, has also caused more death and mayhem than anything in history. By the way, if I believed that for a second, I would not ascribe to any religion at all, right? I mean, if you thought that your religion caused more death and mayhem than anything else, would you subscribe to it? Of course not. Evolution explains everything, and the universe created itself. This is what they are learning in school. And it's, even in Las Vegas, it's not so great. I'm simply saying this is what they are being taught. That's the new default. In the old days, you would, as a parent, correctly assume that your teachers were teaching good things, that to be proud to be an American, to be not only proud, but even to be chauvinistic about America and how wonderful America is and all that it has to offer. But now we know better that that is hardly the situation. You have to fight that. But don't worry, I'm going to get to the good news soon enough, because there is good news. It's more than just pulling your kids out of school, although I think that's a fantastic idea that Alex presented. That is a great voice that you're presenting. It's a boycott of sorts. But there's more to it. And I want to take the next step with it. Look, before that, I want to, you know how they say that leaving your kid alone with the internet is like leaving your kid alone in a very dangerous neighborhood. And you really ought to think of it that way. So if you do have kids or grandkids that you're taking care of, make sure not to leave them alone with the internet. Okay, that's a very important thing. I actually limit the time with our kids can have the internet. That's very powerful. But now, as it turns out, it's not only leaving your kids in a bad neighborhood, so to speak, but you're leaving your kids in school is like leaving your kids in a bad neighborhood. And you just don't know what's going on. I say it's even worse. It's like a bunch of guys break into your house. They put a gun to your kids' heads and say, we're going to take your kids away. The only difference is that they don't actually have guns, and we actually let the guys do it. In fact, we actually drive our kids to the kidnappers and then drop them for 6 or 7 hours at a time. That's the way you got to look at your school. Now, there are many good teachers, many who only want the best. I know Karen was such a person, such a teacher. But unfortunately, there's so many others. All you need is one crazy teacher. All the others can be great, but one crazy teacher, and your kid can snap. And the other side, and I'm talking about the left, has figured this out. They figured out something that I call first in wins. It's part of my book, Keeping the Kids All Right. How do you keep your kids safe from the woke culture? Now, they figure it out, and we should figure it out as parents, as grandparents. When you get to a kid really early in his life, and I'm not going to say their life, okay? I'm going to say his life for the time being. Another time I'll say her, fine. When you get to a kid early in his life, you have the ability to really shape him with the values that you believe. Okay, it's as simple as that. Think of it like clay. When you were a little kid, you played with clay, and you remember that when you first got the clay, you got very excited about it. You shaped it into whatever you wanted, maybe a dinosaur, maybe a rocket ship, whatever. And it was fun, easy to play with. But then you let it dry a little bit, and then what happens? It gets harder to mold. And eventually, if you leave it overnight, it's almost impossible to. Now you have to, maybe you can put some water on it and re-soften it that way, but it's very hard. And then, of course, if you remember what glazing in the kiln was all about, right? I mean, once that happens, you're done. What the left is trying to do is to glaze your kids in the kiln. You need to get there first. When you think of anything that you've enjoyed and any idea that you've absorbed as a young kid, I want you to go back in your own mental memory banks and think about one of your favorite songs that you ever heard. Can anyone give me a favorite song? Young lady.
Row your boat.
Row your boat? Okay, I like that. How about a song that you've heard, like I'll say Band on the Run by Paul McCartney. I was 10 years old when that song came out. Yes, I'm 60 years old. And I remember that. And I remember the first time I heard it. And the sun was setting in the west, of course, and we were in Coscob in Connecticut. And it was such a cool moment. And I remember I was driving with my mom back from a baseball game. I remember that so vividly. Not because of anything, but I remember now. It was the first impression of that song. Every time I hear that song play, that's the visual I have in my head. And I guarantee you, when you think about a song, you have a visual in your head. That's why, by the way, I don't like music videos, because they capture that and they tell you what to think. And that's what the left is doing. They are imposing a music video on you, as it were, as to the way you should think about this or that subject. So be the first. And this is the good news, though. The good news is that if you are the first, the good news is that you are the first. You are parents who have your kids from 2 years old, from birth, of course. But as soon as they start talking, as soon as they start walking, you can talk to them about great things, how awesome America is, how God created everything. Isn't this awesome, little Johnny? Isn't it awesome how people can connect with each other? That's because of God. Thank you, God, right? It's a wonderful thing to do. Just instill that in them. Now, some of you will say, Barak, isn't that indoctrination? Aren't you doing exactly the same thing that you're accusing the left of doing it? Yeah. And you better get to it. Okay? Because if you don't indoctrinate, and there's good indoctrination and there's bad indoctrination. Of course there's indoctrination. I'm Jewish because my parents were Jewish. And I'm raising my kids Jewishly as well, as Jews. And I'm raising them as Americans. What do you expect? You expect us to just do nothing? Just sit there? And just hope the kids figure out everything on their own? That's insane. You're a parent. Be a parent. Act like a parent. Because if it's tabula rasa, guess who comes in? It's the principals, the administrators, and the teachers who just are so thankful to you for leaving your kids with a blank slate in their heads. And truly, it's a blank slate. You think that nothing bad will happen in school. That's the best. I mean, for a lot of parents, they just think, well, I hope for the best. And if they come back saying, hey, Dad, I learned this thing about transgenderism or evolution or that America was a racist country, what do you think, Dad? And that'll never happen, by the way. Okay, they'll just say that, right? But let's say they did, this wonderful child of yours. And then now you're busy on your heels. Explain to the kids why the teacher is wrong. I want you to flip it around. I want you to be the first to say that America is awesome. That's the least racist country in the world. It's the most innovative country in the world. It's the one that spread liberty throughout the world. When America was first founded, it was the only democracy. Now, what is it? More than half the countries in the world are democracies. Thank you, America. So you start it first. You infiltrate their brains with your own indoctrination. And then when the teacher says something crazy, then your kid gets to mock the teacher. Okay? Look, they're learning very little in the schools. I ask you each to ask anybody under 40, okay? Under 40, what year did America declare independence. What year? I've done this, and I stumbled upon this fact from a file clerk that worked for me. Wonderful woman, young lady. She was 24 or so, 25. She had gone to Brentwood High School, magna cum laude from Brentwood. Went to Amherst College, brilliant, also magna cum laude there. And then she went on to Bolt Law School after working with me. And at one point, because of a password that I had, surprise, I had the number 1776 in it. And she said, okay, Barak, what does 1776 mean? And I said, how is it that you could go through the best elementary and high school, one of the finest colleges in America, and you're apparently going to one of the best law schools in America, although I think Stanford's better, I just want to say. And you couldn't just stumble on someone telling you, hey, America declared independence in 1776, pass it on. Anything like that. And she said, to her credit, that's really embarrassing, I should have known that. I said, yeah. And I started asking this question, what year did America declare independence? Anybody under 40, even 45 today. And I'm, just mark my words, 19 out of 20 of them will not know. 19 out of 20, I've been taking notes. The 20th one is a conservative, right? It's true. It's phenomenal. So that's what we're dealing with, the amount of ignorance, and you expect them to, oh, by the way, I follow up, from what country did we declare independence? Hint, we're speaking English. But notwithstanding, and I gave the hint. They say France. I even got Germany once. It was really weird. Anyway, that's the country we're living in. We're in a battle, and we don't necessarily see it. We just don't. And until you see that you've got this problem, you can't rectify it. Understand that you're in a battle. And it's worse than you think. The schools have correctly identified that your children's minds are the battlefield. They've chosen that turf, and you now have to fight on that turf. So I'm a lawyer, as you know. I have some degree of reputation because of my radio show, my podcasts, and my writings, and my books. And parents, conservative parents, would call me during my old days here with the schools that our kids went to, and they said, this is what they're teaching, what can we do? By this time, we've already moved. But even before then, they would ask you, can we file a lawsuit? Can we do a TRO, an injunction of some kind? And I always say to them the same thing. You're too late. If you're coming to me now and saying, what can I do? How can I stop this teaching? That's like, I don't know, your whole lung is already consumed with cancer. And then you go to the doctor and say, what can I do about this? I'm sorry, you're gonna have to remove a lung. That's the way it is now. The solutions, although I think it's a great idea to pull your kids out of public school, if they're in public school for sure, and even some private schools, the solution is not running for school board. The solution is not demanding a meeting with the principal. The solution is not going then to the school board meetings. None of those things will work. You'll get 5 minutes, and you'll be on the other side of the microphone, and the school board will say, yawn, we're just going to vote the way we're going to vote. And it just can't work that way. You have to have a different mode. What I like to say is that you can raise your kid as though he's a Hurricane Hunter plane going through a hurricane. You should be able to have your kid go through public school, even if you choose to stay in public school, and not be fazed whatsoever by the crazy agenda. like a hurricane hunter goes through a hurricane, and it doesn't affect it at all. That's the way it should be, and you can do it. Another example of that, I don't know if you ever saw this, it was on The Apprentice, and I love this one, where LifeLock, you know LifeLock is the credit agency thing, they protect you, okay? And LifeLock had a program where, an advertising campaign where the guy went about all around New York City with his social security number on the back of a truck. It was huge. Whatever it was, I don't remember. And he says, this is how confident I am in LifeLock protecting me. Okay? That's the way you should be with your kids. Okay? Because you can take them out of school. You can make sure they don't go to TikTok or anything on social media. You can even make sure that all their friends are from conservative parents just like you. And it still won't work. Because at the end of the day, they will be exposed. You cannot stop it. So I'm talking about the individual here. We can fight on a more legislative basis. That's the macro level. I'm talking about the micro level, and that's what my entire agenda is about in my book and otherwise. You need to be able to go in there. So how do you do it? How do you get in there? I have 4 steps. One is, of course, to identify the issues, what you're worried about, and what you know that they will talk about. If you don't know that they're going to teach that evolution is the bomb and the universe was created by itself, if you don't know that they're going to mock Christianity and Judaism, if you don't know that they're going to say that a boy can be a girl and gender is fluid, if you don't know that they're going to say America is racist, and the most horrible country in the world, it is, if you don't know that they're going to teach your kids that being born is a blight on the planet, if you don't know that, shame on you. It's like going to battle and saying, well, do you think we should have some guns? I mean, it's silly. That's irresponsible of you as a parent. So get in there. You know these things. Identify the issues. The second thing is explain them. Explain what the issues are. How awesome America is, right? That's the easy one. They're all easy, I think. But my favorite one is I talk to the kids. We drive around. I say, hey, we're driving in a car invented by America. See the light bulb over there? America, right? The internet, and they go around, they suggest ideas. Yes, that's right. Oh, good one. I like it. How many inventions were invented by other countries? Not so many. How many inventions from Soviet Union, right? It's a lot of fun. I actually have this as a game at dinner. And we go around one by one. I have 3 kids. So the 5 of us go and we just talk about another invention by America, another idea by America, another cultural contribution, like rock and roll, for example, jazz, and all the medical breakthroughs and everything else. And we go around and for a long time. And if the kid or me, I can't think of something for 5 seconds, we're out. And we continue on. And the winner is the one who can continue on. It lasts a long time. And it's very exciting. Then I say, well, okay, now, same game, except inventions from Cuba. You'll discover the number of crickets in your house very quickly. So you explain how great it is. And then you say, after you explain how awesome America is and so on, then you explain how people think that America is the worst country in the world. And then you get to laugh about that. And once you get them laughing about that, you can dismiss it. And then you tell them, some teachers will say that America's racist. What do you think about that, Charlie? That'd be really crazy, Dad. I think so too, Charlie. You see how this works? It's the same thing with God. It's so easy. I mean, you think things just came about themselves? What do you think, Charlie? And they'll say, no, that sounds crazy. I agree. And then once in a while, I say, Charlie, once in a while, my son's not Charlie, by the way, his name is Max. and then Alex, and I'm Sasha. Anyway, so I say, what if I told you that you don't need to clean up your room? And Alex says, that would be awesome. And I say, well, here's the reason why you don't need to clean up your room. According to the left, because if you just close the door and wait 1 billion years, the room will clean itself. Kids love that. They love the silliness. They love the absurd. And the left gives up absurdities in spades. Have fun with it. It's so easy. So one by one on all these issues, and then any other issues that you think are important, including Israel now, of course. This is the way to dismiss it. And you get them to go to school, and they can't wait to hear these crazy teachers and friends say this stuff, because they've got the answer. They don't have to come back to you and say, Dad, they said this thing that a boy can be a girl. Is that true, Dad? They're not going to be saying that. They're going to be laughing with you. Dad, get this. Teacher said X. Like, wow, that's awesome. What did you say? I said, that ain't right, teacher. You are messed up. And I always have their back, by the way. I tell them, if you ever get in trouble with the principal, the teacher, whatever, don't worry about it. I'll back you up. Okay, so you stand up for America. You definitely stand up for God. You stand up for being a boy and a girl, and you stand up for all things virtuous and the madness of global warming. All right. So when do you start doing this? As soon as they can start processing information. As soon as that. In a layman's psychology, that's a truism that we all know. First in wins plasticity. We talked about that. But we're seeding the ground. We are deferring to the school administrators. And that's just not acceptable. You've just got to get in there. There are other issues, of course. There's minimum wage, there's rent control, the whole socialism aspect, affirmative action, for example, universal basic income. One of the things, just as an example, I talked to him about minimum wage. I know that sounds like a not so important topic, but it actually is, because minimum wage is the gateway drug to just about everything else, because it hints of equality and what the government should be doing and what a person should be expecting. These are all big issues of the day, and it leads to socialism. So what I do is I say, okay, let's pretend you're an owner of a pizza store, a small pizza store. And what do you think you would do if all of a sudden, and you're barely making any profit, maybe, a couple $100 a month. Now the government is telling you that you're not paying your employees enough. And they do it by a lot. And all of a sudden you realize there's no way I'm going to make any money. What do you do, Alex? Right? So one of them, you said close, right? I said, well, that's what your child will say, close. And I say, what else? You have other options. Well, we can raise the price of the pizzas. Yeah, you can do that. What else? Well, we can buy cheaper cheese, cheaper bread. Yeah. Okay. We can lay off some of them. Yeah, and so on. But the important point is that they need to understand that there are consequences to everything. So at the end of the day, everyone suffers, and they get it. So look, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. One last point. I know I'm almost up in time. It's called toxic information. Your kids are learning toxic information. And why is it that it's so easy for them to absorb this toxic information? And this quest for mediocrity. They're okay with mediocrity. They're told that you're not supposed to have a goal. It's not a good thing. It's the idea of being on time is not a good thing. It's a white thing, which is an insult to anybody who's not white, right? This quest to depopulate and so on. I want to talk about it. The quest to depopulate is a very important aspect of this. This is global warming is an incredibly destructive force. It's not just an idea of mine to control people, which it is, but it also, think about the consequences of that, what that means. Because if you believe that having a child is going to add to the burden of the earth, what was it, groaning with each new child being born, yeah? That really hit me. That's exactly what they're teaching. But if you believe that as a student, well, what does that do? It changes sex altogether. That's one of the main themes of my book, Rise of the Sex Machines. It changes sex from being something that's an intimate, a closeness with God, something that is a gift from God, designed for the purpose of reproducing. It reduces it to the chase of an orgasm, and that's it. And that's why gay sex is great. That's why being transgender is fine. That's why abortion, of course, is absolutely fine, because these are restrictions. The quest is to stop the population, but enjoy all the sex you want. It's a complete inversion of what sex is meant to be. Then there's also the concept of population control. And if you do that, then if you instill the sense that you need to control the population, then there's going to be a lot more suicide, and they're going to encourage suicide. But that would never happen. We're not seeing that today at all, are we? Oh, as Alex pointed out, yeah, we're seeing a huge number of that. And now they're engaging in this, the idea of, what do you call it when you're encouraging suicide? Euthanasia, thank you. In Belgium and Holland, massive spikes in assisted suicides. And there'll come a day, not too far in the future, where somebody will complain about something, maybe even be a little depressed, and they'll say, have you thought about killing yourself? That's like, and that'll be a normal parlance. That is the abortion culture. That is the depopulation culture. All right, I'll leave it with this. Why are all these things happening? Why is it that they're teaching this madness? Why is it that they believe in nonsense like what's happening in Israel? That Israel is somehow a genocidal apartheid country, and they absorb it with no issue whatsoever. They are so certain about that. Why? I mean, the internet's right there. They're happy to get information from Google, but they don't Google anything about Israel. They just hear it from their friends and their professors, maybe from TikTok, and that's what they believe. The reason why they're so passionate about it, why they believe it so quickly, is because it offers them purpose. It's purpose in a box. Here you go. And we've lost that purpose because we don't have God in society. And that's what this talk is all about. Remember always to instill purpose in your child. If you do that, you'll never have any issues. Your kids will be rock solid conservatives. They'll always love God, and you'll never lose them when they become adults themselves. Thank you very much.